That sounds familiar. I have the.
Just drew a blank.
Anyway, while you're pulling that up, we're also doing Hartford Pride.
We're also doing Connecticut Pride, June 5th. But we've got about a month to talk about that before it gets here, though.
So,
but we've confirmed a spot for Hartford Pride as well in the Bushnell Park.
Yep. And that's a little closer.
The Artery Street parking lot
Okay.
in Northampton. It's really easy to find. It's pretty central.
Cool. Anyway, we'll be there, and we'll be filming. Gonna be great, and we've also got that video of Leslie Ann we're gonna get on, plus some interviews with Leslie Ann and her band. So that's Erica and
Erica
Penelope.
Watson and Penelope Larson, bass guitarist and drummer.
Yeah, very cool. Some very cool footage, and we're going to get that on for you very, very soon.
Very talented people. It'll be very cool to watch.
We wanted to do that earlier, but there's been so many other things going on that we haven't quite been able to get that stuff processed, but we will soon.
Making progress.
Yeah, things are starting to come together, so that's going to be cool. Anyway, lots of stuff, but.
And the only other thing I have on the calendar of consequence is we'll have Jill Esplin on May 12th. Jill Esplin, the professor of nursing up at UConn, whose class we went to a few weeks ago.
Yeah, actually, I think we shifted her out to the 19th.
Okay, on May 19th. Coming up in a few weeks.
Yeah, I think I have to check my... I do actually have a calendar somewhere. I have to check that, but I think we shifted her from the, at her request, I believe we shifted her, and
Gotcha.
Renee, you can call in and verify that. But I believe we shifted her to the 19th. And also, I spoke to Renee.
Oh, yes.
And we hopefully will be having Dr. Jeffrey Spiegel on our show soon, who is somebody that...
He's from...
Boston Med.
Boston Med.
Boston Med, and Renee was at the Health and Law Conference,
Yep.
and
happened on
cornered
the
Dr.
17th.
Spiegel, and apparently has gotten him to agree to come on the show, which should be fun, being that he is actually one of my doctors. But
well, and we should say for the record that when Senator Lieberman was here in Connecticut,
yes.
Touring the flood damages recently, he also spoke at the UConn Rainbow Center, and
which we didn't get to go to, unfortunately, because we had
Renee
a previous
and Diana were both there.
Yes.
And Renee secured a promise that Lieberman would try to work us in.
Yes.
As far as that takes you, but maybe a little public pressure will help get him on the show.
We would love to have him on the show.
He was at the Rainbow Center talking about the effort to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell. And he supports repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and we are trying to convince him this is an excellent venue for him to get that point across.
Yeah, that would be fun. Understandably busy.
Understandably busy.
But yeah,
But we're very flexible. Should he find himself in this part of the, should he find himself in his home state some Wednesday, or any other day for that matter, we can film.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the honor would just be tremendous to have someone like him on the air.
And to be able to help him get his message out.
Absolutely.
To help provide him, frankly, a more local platform.
Right.
Something that speaks directly to his constituents, not some national news program where,
Right.
let the people who are going to be potentially voting for him in a couple years know where he stands on the issue.
Sure. Absolutely. And we kind of have a standing invitation to all the local politicians, come on our show. We'll certainly talk to you. And,
even if you have a controversial opinion.
Yeah.
Or contrary opinion.
I mean, we'd love to have people come on.
That might be Freudian.
But anyway, understandably, these people typically are very busy, and it's hard to
Sure.
There are several that we're still working on that have promised to come on the show.
The thing that piqued Renee's attention is not only did his aide make a promise, she also talked to him directly, and he committed to trying.
Yeah. Yes.
He committed to trying.
Yeah, I've done that before and still working on it. But
Mr. Larson, was it?
Well, that was one of them.
Yes.
Yes, and certainly some of our local politicians have sort of committed to being on the show, and we haven't quite gotten them on yet, but we will. Anyway.
Marshal our forces and apply due public pressure.
Yeah.
You're our forces. Help us apply due public pressure.
Right. Anyway.
We can also always do the travel cam.
Yeah. No, I understand. It's tough. It really is. But we are here every Wednesday, and we're always looking for interesting guests.
Yep. So. And we actually have somebody who's interested in coming on the show who left a message after last week's show. We did get your message. We apologize. We just haven't had a chance to call you back.
Yeah, but we will. We will, and try to make that happen. Anyway, so I wanted to talk a little bit about discrimination. You know, we had a caller call in, I think that was last week. Or the week before?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
And, you know, we were sort of trying to get to this and talk about it a little bit. And this caller had sort of had this notion about, you know, the majority rules thing. And it's sort of, yeah, the majority rules in this country, sort of. But on certain issues, when it comes to things, you know, certain moral issues like discrimination, I think that's important that we realize that it isn't necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be what the majority wants. Although I think, in fact, for the most part, when you look at our populace, I think if you look at the actual numbers, the fact of the matter is that the majority does want to treat everybody fairly. The majority is not in favor of discrimination against anybody. Sometimes we need to sort of remind people of that.
Well, and there's also the idea that we do in this country happily have protections in place, mechanisms to protect the minorities from abuse and oppression by the majority.
Yeah. That's a necessary thing. It's in a moral society. That's absolutely necessary.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's certainly a long tradition in our country of when it comes to making decisions, that the majority opinion wins. But alongside of that, there's a long-standing history in our country of moral justice, of doing what's right, even if it's unpopular, because it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
And
it's one of the things that makes us great.
Yeah, it's one of the things that has historically made America a great country. You know.
And it has nearly torn us apart. It was the right thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, we came through the Civil War stronger for it.
Right. A horrible, horrible war.
And again, unquestionably, the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most everybody agrees with that now. There are still a few that don't, but
right.
But yeah, that is just sort of the way it is.
And other societies have not had these mechanisms in place and have committed unbelievable atrocities.
Oh, yeah. And when I know when we've been out and we've been talking to groups or even in smaller settings, when you start talking to people about, yeah, you know what, in the state of Connecticut, if you're trans and your landlord finds out and doesn't like the fact you're trans, and they can cancel your lease, they can kick you out, and there's very little you can do about it. You can be fired by your employer because of your gender identity, and there's very little you can do about it. That's not a majority rules thing. That's one person impacting another, So, you do need to have certain protections in place. And the majority of people, when you start explaining the ramifications of these kinds of things, the majority of people don't want to see that happen.